Good afternoon, Rich.
How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. So I'm Brian Gallagher, Mayor of Somerville, and I'm sitting here with Richie O'Neill. We're in the Somerville Firemen's Exempt Museum on North Doughty Avenue, and Danny LaMountain is our videographer, and Chief O'Neill is the first in what we think is going to be a big series of different interviews of people from and around Somerville. What we're trying to do is to get life in Somerville as you remember it.
Better hurry up.
Yeah.
For the members, yes.
So if you've ever had a conversation with Rich over the years, he probably knows, you probably know more about this town than anybody. Anytime you mention a little point of interest in Somerville, there's a story behind it. And I think that's kind of cool.
Lots of stories in this town.
There is. So what we're trying to do is to get people to understand, learn about, and document our 2.5 square miles of awesome, as you remember it. And we thank you for being a part of this. So
It's been a fun run.
well, we'll go into these questions, and you know, let's have some fun with it.
Okay.
So first off, tell us about you. Your formative years.
My formative years were born in 1947, so I'm 78, trying to get to 79. Raised on the west end of Somerville. In fact, I've never left the west end of Somerville. Apparently, that's where I'm going to stay. Grew up in the southwest corner, South Meadow Street. You know, brothers and sisters, tiny little house, and we all seemed to almost get along. And went to Somerville Public Schools, hauled newspapers, worked at the greenhouse, everything. Just always involved some way or other in Somerville. And joined the fire department, and that started a real chain of events.
So typical Irish family. How many kids in your family?
I had 5 sisters and 2 brothers.
Yeah, that's a big family.
Well, on that block, it wasn't remarkable.
So what we kind of want to do on this is maybe talk a little bit about Somerville, almost neighborhood by neighborhood, as you remember it, kind of growing up. And let's start on the east end. So the other side of the hospital, from Rehill kind of east. What was there? What was it? How do you remember it?
Well, I didn't spend a lot of time in that end of town. I mean, you need a passport to go to the other side of Bridge Street, so we stayed over where we belonged. But it was little houses, but there was also farms over there. North Gaston Avenue, at this side of the hospital, was a sheep farm. And up 22, between Bridge and Gaston, was the Kinsey farm. And the farms stand on the highway like you see 206 now. It's kind of a different place. The east end, at some point, I discovered, and they had the Victory homes. It was a totally different neighborhood than the west end. And the reason I got down there, ultimately, is through school, had friends. And we would go down that end. Because there was no reason to go there unless you're going to see somebody, because nothing went on down there.
What's a Victory home? Because there may be a lot of younger folks who don't know what a Victory home is.
The Victory homes were built after World War II to provide housing. They're small houses, most of them on slabs. And lots of friends lived in them. And the one quirk that they had on this side, not the Finn Dern side, they had oil burners in a pit. And later on with the fire department, I learned all about them because they caught fire a lot.
So what about the hospital? How big was the hospital?
Hospital was small. It was a freestanding building, one building. And I remember going there because my mother was one of the few women in the neighborhood who had a driver's license. And if somebody needed to go to the hospital for whatever, she would drive them down there. And being nosy, I'd go for a ride to see what's over there. And it was a single freestanding building. It's still in there.
It is still in there.
Yeah, they never took it down. They just built around it. So there's this.
So it's that iconic photo that you see sometimes.
Yeah, postcards and all
Yeah.
that was it. And the big lawn around it, and it was tiny compared to what's there today.
That's neat. So let's jump across Main Street and let's take a look at the development of the area around Fairview Avenue and the industrial area in quotes. Adjacent along the train tracks.
Yeah, well, that was the industrial area. There were factories. They were still functioning when I was a kid. They weren't doing what they originally were set up to be, but there was multiple occupancies in there. They did everything in there. I mean, we know from the cleanup that's necessary now. They were doing a lot of stuff. But it was strictly industrial. There was a neighborhood tavern down there. Not that I went there, I was too small, but I remember riding past it.
Did you deliver papers down there?
Not that end. That
Okay.
was a West Ender.
Okay, all right. So it was primarily just industrial,
Well, you had-
manufacturing?
Yeah, it's warehouses, manufacturing, small shops. The street itself, Fairview Avenue, was developed. I mean, those houses were there. And a lot of three-story walk-ups. And I had friends who went to school with, they lived in the apartments down there.
Anything of note that they built down there, that the industry that was made down there?
Oh yeah, you had the Somerville Stove Works, Iron Works. In fact, I have a piece of pipe in the museum that has Somerville Iron Works written on it. Not that we need it here, but I grabbed it because someday if there's a Somerville area museum, that's where it belongs.
Okay.
But if I didn't grab it, it was going to end up in the scrapyard.
That's neat.
So it's laying over on the floor over there.
That's pretty cool. So moving a little further west, Southside Avenue, which is, it's one of the prettiest streets in the borough.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about that area?
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, you've got that industrial park right off of there. That was not there. You had the Somerville sewer plant, which was another story, but it was farmed. Most of those areas where the industrial was the Gary's farm. They grew vegetables down there, and that got run out of there. I'd say in the late '60s, early '70s, and the industrial buildings were built. Southside Avenue was just a pretty street. I mean, with the big trees and all that. And, we just passed through there. We were going down to the river.
Yeah, just play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And what is that? What you did for fun as a kid? You just
well, we did a lot of different things. Not that end of town, but yeah. If you go to the west end of town, I would say from the Brook West, that whole area, that was kind of where we inhabited. And the fields was Raritan Valley Farms. They had cows and everything down there yet. And 206 went through. There was a tunnel where that went to Raritan that the cows came through in the morning. They would graze in Somerville and go back to Raritan to be milked and fed. And that was that happened 7 days a week. But we would go through that tunnel, get into the Raritan side, and there were cornfields. We'd be messing around in the cornfield, back to the river to go fishing. It was a playground.
so there's I guess a rumor that when they redid 206, the tunnel was just bulldozed in, and the tunnel is still there.
The tunnel is still there. They didn't bulldoze it. They just filled it up and paved over it. It's there. And that was used by the Minuteman restaurant after the dairy cows went away. Suddenly one day these machines showed up and they started digging up the fields and piling the dirt up on the Somerville side, and they built the Minuteman restaurant. And that was on piles. I watched the pile driver sticking the piles in the ground. And then we built the Minuteman, and the tunnel was used. If you were coming down 206, you'd go down under the tunnel and come up into the Minuteman parking lot. It was one way. It was inbound only. And then when that closed and the highway got widened, that all got buried. It's still there.
That's neat.
There was another tunnel. It was really a big sewer pipe. And there was a brook on the Raritan side of 206, and the cows needed some place to drink on the Somerville side. So there was a pipe installed, and the water from the brook would keep the pond full for the cows to drink. And that was done, one of our shortcuts across the Raritan was through the tunnel.
Life as a kid.
That place was really something. I mean, first off, the meadows were pretty.
Yeah.
Be wildflowers and all that, and it would be mowed every so often. If you don't mow a field, it'll turn into trees. And the dairy kept mowing it so they would have grass. And they would mow maybe once a year, and we'd get like 1,000 rabbits running up the street, running out of the field, all over the place.
So let's talk a little bit about North Gaston Ave and what was called the Brickyard.
We never knew much about the Brickyard. Heard about it, and there's bricks. If you walk along the brook, you find the bricks. So we knew that happened. I learned more about that later. But North Gaston was farms. There was a big sheep farm over there on the east side, and the west side was Kinsey's farm, and with the farm stand. And then they built all those houses. What do you call it? The Cadillac places, General Motors houses.
Yes.
And that all got built, and Brickyards was somewhere in there. But we didn't explore that end of town too much. The reason I know about the farms is we'd go to the farm stand.
Okay. Yeah. So, and the rumor is, I have friends who lived over there, and They say when they dig a little deeper in their backyards, they come across the bricks.
Oh, they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and if you go, when a tree falls over by the brook, many times you'll see bricks come up.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So the area north of Main Street, East and West High Street, Altamont, Cliff Street, north and south of Bridge and High, you know, that whole area. And that's now starting to get into your stomping grounds.
Yeah, well, yeah, getting closer. North of Main Street is not too different than what you see today. The school was torn down. You know, they tore one building down, or two buildings actually, and that was a playground there. But that was schools. We have pictures in the museum of inspection day. We started there, had the schools in the background, and then of course went to school there. You know, that was the grammar school. And one year around half sessions before they opened the Vanderveer School, you would go. They split the classes in half. You go in at like 7:30, have class until 1. Then you put your books on the windowsill and go home. And the second class came in. And then when they opened up Vanderveer, they closed. All those kids went to school. The whole East End went to school down in Vanderveer, and we stayed here. And then we got together again in junior high school.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, they ran out of room. So they
Yeah.
split the deck.
That's amazing. So Route 22, high school area. So from what it was to what it is, and talk a little bit about what it was.
Well, what it was, where the high school sits now, was really woods and fields. Not that big, but it was a wooded area. And there were some houses in there. And I don't know when the Board of Education bought everybody out, but a couple of them burned down. You know, I was with the fire department, that all happened. But when you sat in the bleachers at Brooks Field, behind you were trees. There was no buildings there except little houses. Several of them burned. In fact, I guess I can tell this now. But we had one of those houses burning one night. And I found, on the second floor, I found this large doll. So I yelled out the window, squad, squad. Those guys all came running. I threw the doll out the window.
Oh.
They got over there for a couple days.
Those are those stories that live in infamy.
Yeah, I'm sure they're still harboring that deal.
What did Route 22 look like? What was it?
Well, nothing like it. Had diners. You had Johnny's Diner, the Village Diner, Stewart's Root Beer, which was a gravel lot. That was seasonal, but it was open, you know, seasonally. That's where anybody with a hot car would drive in circles around that. And the diners were big time. And then you had Kinsey's Farm Stand. You know, that all was pretty vacant. And then the car dealerships all moved out of Somerville. They went onto the highway, and that filled up the car dealers. But that was in the, I could say, the 60s.
Was it a way station or a motor vehicle inspection?
There was a scale there.
It was a scale.
Truck scale right on the meeting, almost where the chicken place, whatever. There's a big restaurant there where Howard Johnson's used to be. Near that was a scale.
And there was a Howard Johnson's as well.
Howard Johnson's, yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, my baseball coach owned it. If we won, we got Sundays. If we lost, we went home.
Yeah. So were you the champs?
Nah, but we won a few.
Now this is an interesting one. So there's the section of town, I'll call it the new neighborhood, which was and I guess is still affectionately known as the landfill, and it's now residential units. What do you remember about that area?
Oh, lots of stuff, because that wasn't really the landfill. The landfill was out by Sarah Jane's, and actually before that, South Bridge Street and 206 where you had got that medical building, that was a burning dump. That was on fire. And it just always burned. And they would dump the garbage there. And then at some point, I don't know why, but they stopped. And that turned into nothing. And the circus would set up there periodically. And then
right on 206.
Right on 206 and Bridge, you know, which had been the burning dump. They grew grass, and the circus would come to town. It was Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers, and they would set the circus up there periodically. And then one day they paved it, big circular paving. And naturally, I'm down there watching them, see what's going on here. And that was where Somerville had airmail. The helicopter would come, like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The helicopter landed, and Mr. Ryan, who drove the mail around town, he'd be out there to officially accept the bag of airmail and drive it up to the post office to get delivered the next day. And the good humor man was there, half the town was there watching the helicopter land.
And is that how Somerville got their mail?
By airmail, otherwise it came by train.
Wow.
Yeah, the train came, there was an afternoon train. It was after school, because I'd go down and watch it come in. It'd be like 3:30, 4 o'clock. The mail train would come on a local track. And the mail sacks, they would open, they had a sliding board. The train would stop by the sliding board, and Mr. Ryan would back his truck under, and they would throw the mail bags down the sliding board, and then he would officially drive it over to the post office for delivery the next day. Ryan was busy, you know? But he moved mail. It was a contractor. That was his own truck.
So the landfill itself, the pile, that I'm assuming was just really woods and wetland and streams.
Yeah, there was a brook down there, which the mosquito commission came annually and trenched it out.
Yeah.
But we did that. You had little fish and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you had a swamp, which is kind of still there. And after we did snapping turtles and all kinds of stuff in there, that was alive.
Would you hunt down there? Did you?
I wasn't a hunter. Yeah, my brother did trapping down there. Lots of kids trapped and all that. You know, down there, muskrats and all that kind of stuff. It was a real swamp. Part of it's still there.
I had heard a story that kids would leave school, go down to the dump, down to the landfill, and they would shoot muskrats. And then there was places to sell. I don't know if they were in Somerville or Raritan, but they would go and sell them for pelts.
Yeah, that's what my brother did. He would trap them, they'd get them and dry the pelts, and I don't know exactly where he took it. It was close, up Raritan, I think, Supreme Fur probably. But that's how you made some money.
Yeah, that's great. South Middle, the Wallace House, the Dutch Parsonage, that's your stomping ground.
That's right there, 10 South Middle Street.
What was it like?
Well, 10 South Middle, it changed over time, but Middle Street was paved. The left side of Washington Place was paved. The right side was not. And we called that the Dairy Road, because Raritan Valley Farms was there. They had their processing plant, milk and ice cream, and they made that all over there. And there were cows. Every now and then something would get loose, people wandering around. But that was the right side. They started building those houses on the right side, the west side going, make the right turn. And they all got built, and the street got paved. But we didn't have a name, and it was the Dairy Road.
So, the big one, Main Street, the business district.
Yep.
What was it versus what do we have now?
Well, that was this west side, where the edge is and all that, that was my paper route. I delivered an afternoon paper called the Somerset Star. And I would get out of school. I started hauling papers in second grade. But the paper bag was too big, so my mother took me to the food land. They had a shoemaker in there, and he stitched up the straps so I could hold the bag. But I would get out of school, walk down the street where Central Pizzeria was. That was a printing press. You picked up your papers, Route 6B, and I would kind of walk home delivering papers all down Main Street. Thinking back, and even then I knew it was kind of not a bad, tough area, but it was really run down. I mean, it was, old wood frame buildings and no foundations and all that kind of stuff. But you had interesting occupancies. You had a kosher market, you had Raymart Paint Center, you had aluminum sales. You had all these little shops. Little Gem Barber Shop was in there, and they couldn't have a phone because they got caught doing bookie work. The phone went away. They couldn't have a phone. But it was just these little shops. And then, of course, you had the A&P. It was right on Main Street.
How many food stores were there?
Well, it was a bunch. We had little neighborhood markets, including down at my end, we had Falk's Market. But on Main Street, you had Foodland, which was right here on Main Street, opposite, right by Mannion's.
Okay.
In fact, where the DSA had their office for a while.
Yes.
And that was an interesting building, because when you walked uphill inside the building, but it was a food market, and they also had this shoemaker guy in there. He had these little booths where you get your shoes fixed, you sit on the bench and wait. That's where I got my paper bag fixed. And then they had barrels of pickles and stuff like that. It was kind of old-fashioned. Then you had the A&P across the street in the Eagle Sanitary Building, or the Eagle Building. And then down the street, to going eastbound on the hill, you had the food tent. Well, you had Acme first, right by the Court Theater. and the Acme. And that's what the Greek restaurant and something else in there now. And on the hill you had Food Town, which got removed and a diner went there. Things kept changing. I mean, nothing stayed the same very long. But you had, so those food stores were there. And you had Grant's and Woolworths, which weren't food stores, but they were the big department stores. And then Burke's was an independent department store. I mean, there was a lot of stuff down there. Somerville was the hub. And then everybody blames the Bridgewater Commons for the demise of Somerville initially. That's not true. When they opened the Somerville Shopping Center, 11 built that, that sucked things right out of Grant's went, Woolworths went, and the food stores went up there. Everything changed. And then the A&P went to where Walgreens is now. There was a big mansion there that the state police occupied. And there was a fountain out front that was dry, and there was a carriage house out back of barn where the state troopers would fuel their cars up and all that. And naturally, we're over there talking to them, you know. And that got shut down when they moved up onto the state police moved up onto the highway. That got shut down and torn down, and they built the A&P, which we thought was just a huge building. And now when I walk in there for the drugstore, it's like, looked a lot bigger back then. But that killed Falk's. Falk's had a market on the corner of Somerset and Middle, you know, where we used to put sludge into the gumball machine, but that's another story.
Now, apparently there were a whole lot of car dealers downtown too.
Had a bunch, of about 8. If you start on Somerset Street, where the jug handle is now, you had Crystal Ice and Fuel in the back. In front, you had Warren Stickles. He sold Henry J's and Kaiser Frazer's.
Were those cars?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then if you're walking down into Somerville, you had Somerville Ford right in the corner of Dowdy and Main. It later became Ford and moved up on that highway. Another half block just about opposite Davenport Street, you had Hennessy Buick, which got sold to Mr. Fennessy. They changed one letter on the sign. Then you get down to Division Street, turn right, you had Dolphy Motors, which sold the Dodges and Plymouths. Then back up, you go down the corner of Warren, you had Dooley Brothers Chevrolet. And make a left on Grove, where you've got the county administration building, it was Hogle and Pontiac and Cadillac. And back up, going down the hill, you had Packard.
That's amazing.
No, it's one word. It isn't really Somerville, but you think it would be. Where Thul's is or something up on West End Avenue,
Yes.
they sold Etzel's.
Really?
There's Etzel dealership in there, and across the street they sold Alice Chandler tractors. And up on Mountain Avenue, up by the Immaculata, where the laundromat is now,
Yes.
they sold Ford tractors there and implements.
That's amazing.
That's what was here.
So in the 40s, 50s, 60s, anything you could want, you didn't have to leave Somerville.
Oh yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Sears would bring it.
Yeah. Including a house.
Including a house, yeah. Yeah,
Which there's a bunch of them in Somerville.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you compare that to what we have today, and you know what's your impressions? What's your
My overall impression is the town's better now than it ever has been, as far as what I can see. I mean, the dealerships are nice to have, but they take a lot of space. You don't have space in Somerville for that stuff. I mean, they're squeezed in on the highway.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not practical to be selling, have a dealership on Main Street in Somerville anymore. But the town has had its ups and downs, is the best way to say it. I've written about a couple of them. But, you know, today the town is different. The restaurants, there's more restaurants in this town than I ever thought was possible. For a while we had more pizza shops than I ever thought possible. And that seems to be gone, but now there's restaurants. The town was busy Friday nights and Saturdays because people came in from out of town to shop and do whatever. Now it's busy every night. It's the restaurants that's driving that. Yeah. Retail, there seems to be a lot of them. How they're doing, I don't know. I'm not really a big retail guy, but I can tell by looking that retail has changed. The Amazon has changed everything. You see those trucks all over town and little brown boxes everywhere. So I think that's changed the nature. But thankfully, the town seems vibrant. I mean, things come and go, what they always have. But the store empties out, something comes back. It's the American way. Try it out. See if I can make it work. You know, and for the most part, they stay.
It's entrepreneurship.
That's it.
Yeah.
You got to be, if you're a restaurant, you got to be good to make it here. You know, I mean, that's just the plain fact of life. People have choices. And all these apartments that are in the town, those people, as my daughter says, they don't cook. You know, they order in or go out. And I think that's got a lot of what's driving Main Street, because there was a time when I walked down Main Street, I'd know pretty much everybody, or at least recognize them. Not so today.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Which is good, I think.
Yeah. That's neat. So, I guess in a couple of words, what does Somerville mean to you?
It's home.
That's awesome. Rich, thank you.
Anytime.
Thanks for your time and the wonderful memories and history of Somerville. It's pretty cool. This interview is going to be on different points of social media. You know, we're hoping that we can interview you again on different parts, other parts like the fire department, which you have a long and sordid history on. But what we're trying to do is just to bring everybody into the fold of our 2.5 square miles of awesome.
No, it's fun to do. Come visit the museum.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.